162 AD, Rome's golden age.
The empire of the mid-2nd century, it's at its pinnacle in terms of its territorial expanse and its wealth. It's an empire that is leading the world in science, in culture, in philosophy, and in medicine.
Rome is really the cultural center of the universe in this moment. Authors, doctors, architects, philosophers flock to the city because they are enticed by Rome itself.
Among those entranced by Rome is Galen of Pergamon, a brilliant medical scientist whose works are still studied today.
Galen is probably the single most influential figure in the history of medicine.
He was an author, a philosopher, a scientist, a doctor, and an incredibly ambitious man.
His writings survive, which is true for very, very few doctors from this period. And we know that he's exceptionally skilled and he has an ego to match.
Galen comes to the Colosseum to catch the eye of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, one of the empire's great minds.
Marcus Aurelius comes at the tail end of the 5 good emperors.
Marcus Aurelius was an intellectual and was very much engaged in philosophical reflection. And in fact, his nickname is sometimes the Philosopher King.
He was an extraordinary character. He'd been chosen as a very young man and trained to be emperor. And for once, they got it absolutely right.
But Marcus Aurelius does not rule alone. For the first time in Roman history, 2 emperors govern side by side.
Marcus Aurelius' adopted brother Lucius Verus, they were almost opposites. They reigned together perfectly because they were 2 sides of a coin. There's no greater example of how absolute opposite these men were as to their attitude to the Colosseum and to the games. Someone like Marcus, who was so intellectual, so philosophical, for him, the endless and pointless bloodshed made no sense. Lucius, on the other hand, absolutely lives for them. Yes, it's a vulgar sport, it's a vulgar vice to have, but he adores it.
A surgeon like Galen plays a crucial role in keeping gladiators alive. But he wants more.
Galen was such an ambitious and driven individual that he wanted to become the world's greatest doctor. He already thought of himself as such. He just wanted people to acknowledge it. By all accounts, the plague was a horrible, horrible disease. I mean, in addition to the expected diarrhea and vomiting and fevers, what happened to the skin was really disconcerting. Scabs would form and then fall off, leaving horrible lesions.
It was devastating in its effects. People didn't seem to have any previous immunity and killed a large percentage of the people that it infected.
No one is spared, including emperors.
Not you too.
It's nothing.
There's a doctor I met once. He cured Eudamus when no one else could. He claims to have an antidote to any poison.
You want to bring him here? To this?
I cannot simply watch you die.
The Roman Empire has never been free of diseases. But epidemics, like the one that Marcus Aurelius is experiencing, that's something new.
It rapidly became apparent to the high command and to the emperor himself that they were wrestling with a health crisis of the highest order. Marcus Aurelius reacted by summoning Galen from Rome.
Imagine that kind of emotion that would have been in Galen at that time. Here's my chance to actually serve the emperor directly. And on the other hand, it's like, this is a really bad situation I'm going into.
The situation that Galen found when he reached Aquileia was more severe than anything he could have imagined.
Galen gives us some pretty detailed description of symptoms, and based on those symptoms, we think it was likely smallpox. It might have been the first appearance of smallpox in the Mediterranean world. There's some argument that he's seeing a lot of hemorrhagic smallpox, which is a really lethal form of smallpox where you get a lot of bleeding under the skin.
This crisis becomes, in many ways for the Empire, but in a very different and essential way for Galen, the defining challenge of his life. More than perhaps at any point in human memory, disease had become an existential threat to Rome itself.
The winter that he spent at Aquileia was very difficult for him. It's rare for him to express despair or feeling of being overwhelmed, but that is exactly what he does. He treated hundreds of plague victims, and he says that the whole population struggled to survive that winter of plague in 168.
Verus didn't make it very far, only 50 miles from Aquileia. For Marcus Aurelius, he is left on his own to rule an empire that's stricken by plague, has enemies at the borders, an army that's been devastated by this disease. He knows that the responsibility is his to rule the Roman Empire by himself.
Galen must have been very relieved not to be on the front lines. And now he can turn his attention to his favorite activities: reading, writing, composing, scientific works, journals, and the like.
Galen is probably the single most influential figure in the history of medicine. He left us a massive collection of medical texts. In fact, he's probably the most prolific author in antiquity. His Greek works comprise about 1/8 of all ancient Greek manuscripts that we have. The knowledge that Galen's medical texts contain defined Islamic and European medicine for 15 centuries.